Okay. I'm going to get started. It's 7 o'clock by my clock. And I just want to welcome everybody. I'm excited that you're all here and agreed to come in. So first of all, can we start out by everybody showing their hand if they're willing to have this session recorded? And I see, wonderful. Thank you for all that approval. We're going to have John Murray and David Monk be our support people, and I'll be doing some of the facilitation, but not all of it. My goal is to end at 8:40, and we're going to have a break at about 7:50 or so, about a 5-minute break, just a little break. But what we're going to do is review evacuation zones and alerts, personal preparedness to evacuate, special needs of nearby neighbors, and post-evacuation communication channels and how do we find each other. And there may be questions that come up during this session that we just don't have time for, but I will make note of them. I'm going to save the chat window. So if you put your questions in the chat, they will either get answered or saved, and we will work on getting everything answered at some point. So if you have your video turned off, it would be just great to see your face now. And we'll leave you on mute, but we'll ask you to unmute if you want to come on and ask a question live, after it's been in the chat box. I'm going to try to keep a queue on, who's next. Okay, and so everybody looks like we got your name in the window. That's great. And you're all on gallery view, I assume. That helps to make you feel like you're in a room with a group. So first, let's go around and introduce ourselves by first name and approximately where you live. Because this is going to be recorded and other people may see it who don't live here, we don't want to give them exact street number names, of our house number. But I'm going to put on screen a map of our neighborhood. And Tricia, let's start with you. Just introduce yourself very briefly. Where do you live?
My husband's name is Craig, and he's not home this weekend, so I'm here for the both of us. And we live on East 43rd near the Shadowwood turnoff.
Hi, this is Keith and Mary McDougall, and we live on Barber Drive.
I live with David at the end of the cul-de-sac on Shadowwood Drive.
I'm Jerry, and I live right across from Shadowwood Park.
I'm Lucy, and I live up the hill about 2 blocks from Shadowwood Park on Barber Drive.
Charlotte Maloney, and Jim is in another box of his own, and we live at the corner of Barber and Shadowwood Drive.
Heather and Dave here. Most of you guys know us. I love how you've done the little graphic, David. We live down second house from the dead end of the main part of Shadowwood, kind of kitty corner to the park.
Hi, I'm Claire.
Hello, I'm Roger.
We live on Barber Drive on one of the cul-de-sacs, and we're brand new here, so we're excited to join.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Jan. My husband and Bob and I live here at the very dead end of Shadowwood, next to Heather and Dave.
We live on the first part of Shadowwood Drive.
Jim, do you want to say hello? You're muted.
Yeah, people don't often complain that about me. I live basically where Charlotte said we do.
Hi, Dave Schwartz and Heidi Kaufman. We live on 43rd.
David Monk. I live on 48th in Fox Hollow and am currently a board member with the Neighborhood Association.
I think I should add that David does a lot of liaison work between the neighborhoods and the city. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Recruiting block captains, very busy. And John.
Hi, I'm John Quetzalcoatl-Murray, and I live on Fox Hollow across the street from David Monk. And he goes around and gets people to volunteer for things. And that's how I got into this.
I'll just introduce myself briefly, that I've been in this kind of community neighborhood organizing since about 2014, when I did Map Your Neighborhood in preparation for the Cascadia mega earthquake. And the benefits to our neighbors of that kind of organization have been numerous. And now with the urgent awareness we have of wildfires, especially last summer, and so far this year, we've been pretty fortunate. I felt it was time to revitalize this kind of groupthink.
The value of you all knowing each other and your willingness to count on one another in times of trouble, and to create community and be friends and enjoy the amenities of that are just huge. So whether it's enjoying the bounties of your gardens and coming together and having a wonderful picnic and barbecue or something, and of course it could be contending with a disaster of some sort, like a snowstorm where we all lose electricity for 8 days or something. As you know from your own experiences in life, that preparation ends at the beginning of the event, whatever it is, right? So whatever you can do prior to be better prepared for it, emotionally, physically, I think all the better. So thank you all for participating. This is something that the Neighborhood Association is trying to cultivate in every group of nearby neighbors. It's a really essential part of being a community. We have about 30 groups now in our neighborhood, and we could probably use 200 or more to have everybody included. So we've got a long way to go. So as you all know, if you don't, the Eugene Springfield Fire divided the Eugene Springfield metropolitan area up into zones. And these zones are the reason they created these zones were to give evacuation notices in an organized fashion to all of us in the event of a wildfire or other disaster scenario where we would have to leave our homes. And I'm pretty confident that you all are in zone 31. If you're already registered with or signed up with the Alert Me with the Lane County Emergency Alert System, then you may have gotten a red flag warning today on a text message. If you're not, and you'd like help doing that, we would definitely like to help you, because that is probably the best resource for knowing in advance of situations that we'll want to be aware of, potentially that we would need to, of course, evacuate from our homes. And the Eugene Springfield Fire, as well as a lot of fire agencies around the country, use this Ready, Set, Go format, 1, 2, 3. So when they text you this ready, they want you to be organizing everything you need, getting it to your car, making sure you have your animals, pets with you. If your kids or spouse are elsewhere in the community, you're communicating with them so that you all can rally at a given location. I highly recommend that you create a family evacuation plan for yourselves and decide where you're going to go, how you're going to communicate. As David indicated, that he got started with concerns about an earthquake. In that context, we probably won't have any communication locally. So it's really important that you have somebody outside the community that your family members can connect with and relay messages. So I, again, highly recommend that you develop your own emergency evacuation plan.
Fred's neighborhood is much like your neighborhood, and the neighborhoods of 120 million people who live in and near forests and grasslands throughout America. Because Fred lives near land that needs fire to be healthy, he knows he has to live with wildfire. Fire is simply inevitable where Fred lives, so he has been working hard to prepare. He has been clearing vegetation from around his home and making sure his house is built with materials that are less likely to burn. Last year, he replaced his wood shake roof with a metal one. Fred also knows that his effort will be most effective when the whole neighborhood is prepared, so he's also been talking with his neighbors and encouraging them to prepare for wildfire. Hi, Fred's neighbors. Fred has even been packing a go kit with important papers, pills, photographs, and supplies in case he has to evacuate during a wildfire. Fred's neighbor, Damien, is a volunteer with the local fire department. Damien and his co-workers train together for forest fires, are properly equipped, and talk to the community about wildfire risk, the importance of being ready to evacuate if necessary, and even the best evacuation routes to use. Damien and his co-workers are also trained to use controlled burns in natural areas to improve community safety and give nature a boost. Across town, Lupe is working in her small bakery. She too understands that there is a risk of wildfire in her community, and so she has taken action to prepare her business. She has her computer inventory backed up off-site and has a business continuity plan that will help her stay in business after wildfire. Lupe's Aunt Mary works at City Hall. Mary has been working with the community to update the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and draft codes and ordinances that help people build new homes in the most appropriate places with materials that are less likely to catch fire. Mary works with developers to make sure new neighborhoods have more than one way in and out in case there is an evacuation. She has even been working with her local land management agencies as they identify land around the community that needs a little more work to be ready for wildfire. Fred, Damien, Lupe, and Mary are all working to make their community better able to live with wildfire because they know fire is natural where they have chosen to live. They understand their risk and are actively working to reduce that risk. Fred, Damien, Lupe, and Mary live in a fire-adapted community, even if they don't realize it. As we have seen from Fred and his neighbors, there are many tools and strategies for communities adapting to wildland fire. Not every community will use every tool, but generally speaking, the more actions a community takes, the more ready for fire it will become. As we have seen, Fred and his neighbors are taking action before a wildfire. But it is important to realize that community preparedness before a fire, safe and efficient wildfire response during a fire, and a well-resourced and supported recovery after a fire are all part of the process. What does success look like? Just like in Fred's neighborhood, success looks like many people working together to prepare for the effects of wildfire. In that way, the responsibilities and benefits of adapting to wildfire are shared among all those who live in places where fires burn. Here are 5 easy ways you can help your community become more fire adapted. 1. Make sure your home is prepared for wildfire by using fire-resistant construction materials and keeping vegetation from touching the structure. 2. Talk to your neighbors about wildfire and encourage them to take action too. 3. Prepare your family for an evacuation by making an emergency kit and having an evacuation plan. 4. Find out if your community has a community wildfire protection plan. Volunteer to work with your local fire response organizations to create or update it. 5. Visit www.fireadaptedwashington.org to learn more.
You can see here that pink star in the middle. That's the Shadowwood neighborhood. And so we have zone 33 and 25 to the south of us. But the important thing is to remember zone 31. And when you sign up for alerts, they go to specific zones.
It would be good to know the zones around you as well, because if the alerts are, if zone 33 is being told to evacuate, you can rest assured it's probably coming your way. If you all read anything about the Talent Phoenix fire down in Southern Oregon, it was really neighbors knocking on neighbors' doors. The sheriff there decided not to engage the alert system, fearing that it would create this traffic jam. So that it was neighbors alerting neighbors to the danger. Holiday Farm fire. A lot of people, they had their power cut off. They knew their power was going to get cut off that night. They turned off their cell phones to save their battery. Again, they didn't get the alert. So it was neighbors alerting neighbors. So this is a critical part of it. If one of you or several of you get that notification, you want to make sure you've probably got a communication tree to make sure that everybody else received that as well. And so that they're aware that you're in a level 1 or 2 or whatever it is. So that's it, just like with any other disaster situation, emergency situation, we are really the ones, we're the first responders looking after each other. And we should assume that's going to be the case for the most part, because our first responders are going to be overwhelmed with all the needs from this huge community that we live in. So it's there's so many benefits for you all knowing each other, counting on each other, being able to reach out to each other, knowing what your skill sets and resources are, and be willing to share those things.
One of the things that I'm going to do is buy an inexpensive air horn. They're very loud. And you may have seen my note in the email that I sent out earlier, but there'll be a code system, one long blast followed by a pause, and another one long blast means we're in alert level 1. And similarly for level 2, it would be 2 short blasts followed by a long pause, 2 short blasts. And I'll just run around the neighborhood making sure that if you didn't get the alert on your phone, you're going to get it through the airwaves. Any questions at this point about zones and the alert system? Just unmute yourself, Heather.
Thanks. I've been on my alert. I've had the alert sense for a while, and for, I don't know, months and months, I guess. And sometimes I don't get certain alerts that I know other people are getting, like my daughter will get an alert that I don't. So for instance, today, the red flag warning, I got that on email and through another alert system I'm a part of, and I got, and I saw it, of course, on my NOAA app, but it didn't ever come into my alert sense. I do get other ones. I've gotten the high heat warnings. And I've checked my settings, and so I have it set for my address. So does it automatically, has anybody else had that problem? Or is it just where you kind of don't always get the alerts?
Okay. Same problem.
Okay. Did you guys get the red flag alert today on Alert Sense?
Yes, I see several heads going up and down.
But then sometimes you guys randomly don't get ones that you think should have come in on Alert Sense?
Yeah, I got the email alert, but I didn't get the phone alert.
Okay.
And Valerie got the phone alert, but not the email alert.
Huh.
And I tried to get in to change the settings in my profile and I couldn't get in. So I sent an email to the help desk. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
David, anything you want to say about that?
No, I think you're right. We really shouldn't assume that it's going to work well. In most scenarios, it hasn't worked well. So the more redundancies we can have, I think David's idea with the horn is a really good one. If you all know what that sound is, I'm sure I'll hear it up here on Fox Hollow. That's something we've been talking about. The Mercy operations management folks down in Southern California, they have 8 or 10 different systems to alert neighbors, and horns, sirens are one of them. So I think that's a great idea.
Anybody else? Comments, questions?
Okay, great. I have another.
Go for it.
The main one, my first question, and one of the reasons I'm so glad you're doing this is, as you know, David Monk and everybody else, we have but one egress and ingress. And aside from the fact that I think people with four-wheel drive might be heading up to the top of Barber and going up that field onto South Shasta or whatever, do you have any recommendations for neighborhoods like ours? And which direction we turn if we do manage to get out Shadowwood and have to go right or left on 43rd?
Well, that's one of the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's one of the reasons why Eugene Springfield Fire won't share specific evacuation routes with us, because not knowing where the fire's coming from, they can't advise us how to evacuate from our properties. What I would say with you all is, especially those of you on Shadowwood, is that you should probably be prepared to evacuate at the earliest. And you get an alert, you're at a level 1, you should evacuate, because if you wait too long, not only will you have difficulty of possibility of not being able to get out on the 43rd, once you get to West Amazon, or sorry, once you get to East Amazon, there could be all the folks south of you flooding down that street, right? And everybody coming in as you enter it. So what the experts say is leave as early as possible. If your intention is to evacuate, then you should evacuate as soon as possible. And for you all on Shadowwood, I would highly recommend that you think about that. As soon as you get that notice to evacuate, or excuse me, that level 1 alert, I think you should be gearing up to leave.
And if we hear David Hazen's thing, air horn going off, or we see it on our alert, where do we go to see where the fire is so we know what the evacuation route is?
News media outlets might be the place that would be making those kinds of announcements. There may also be announcements of preferable or potential evacuation routes in the alerts, but it's going to be a pretty quickly changing situation. And that's one of the reasons we do this exercise, is so that we anticipate these kind of bottleneck points in the decision-making process. And I think first order of business is just simply get familiar with a map of the neighborhood and just look at what's potential. Could I go up North Shasta Loop? Could I go up Fox Hollow? I think most fires are going to be coming from the southeast, just because that's the prevailing winds and where fires have come from before. But it won't always be the same or predictable. I did talk to the information officer at the county sheriff, and he was very informative, saying that all of the agencies at the state, city, and county level that are responsible for directing traffic have a network of communication where they can call extra staff into this area to help direct traffic. And that was very reassuring for me to hear, because I think one of our biggest worries is having the fire overtake us while we are evacuating, because we've seen the media reports and people posting their own personal videos of situations like that, where they're driving through the flames. We want to get ahead of the game. Yeah.
If I could add one thing, I have a nearby neighbor who came from Paradise, California, and he, as David just indicated, people lost their lives. They lose their lives in their cars trying to escape. He lost his mother-in-law and his niece, who got trapped in the flames trying to evacuate in their car. And he's convinced, we live quite close to Spencer Butte Middle School. So as you think about your own evacuation plans, what's the nearest largest space, parking lot, park? But to have 10 acres of grass around you, I think it might be frightening to have that fire burning all around you, but you're not going to get caught in your car. You might also think about Albertson parking lot or Alton Baker Park or Spencer Butte Middle School. So a lot of folks who've lived through wildfire evacuations advocate finding the closest big open space to get to.
There's a big green space off of East Amazon at the Charlemagne School. I think it's called Kincaid Park. Yeah.
Yes.
That is a generous space. It's green, it's watered. That's the kind of thing, an alternative choice, you know, if you try going north on East Amazon and you can't get anywhere, at least you have that as a resource.
I'm thinking South Eugene High School because it's farther away from groups of trees, you know, and it's a very big parking lot. So that's what I would think about.
And there's that big area just south of the middle school, Roosevelt.
Yeah, those are both good locations. The Eugene Springfield Fire is advocating that we go to, those of us in Southeast Eugene, go to the fairgrounds. So just like Charlotte said, I think South Eugene and Roosevelt would be much better locations than trying to get to the fairgrounds personally. But again, I don't want to be second guessing Eugene Springfield Fire. I'm just clearly speaking from my personal opinion. Again, these folks from Paradise, he had all his family photos were all on an external hard drive that went into his go bag. So he didn't lose anything like that really meant something to him. And you cannot, you know, take 5 seconds, think about all the things you'd have to leave if you had to evacuate inside of 10 or 15 minutes, you know, family heirlooms, things that you would be sad to lose. But nonetheless, that's the reality of it. So to the degree that you can take copies of all these documents and pictures and everything that's you might need to recreate your life to start putting things back together again. You want to try to do that because another Paradise survivor that's been working with John and I, her experience with the insurance companies was as bad as it could be. She's still fighting with her insurance companies 3 years later. So if you can document all those things, all the better. Things you have in your home and the things that you want your insurance company to place for you.
One of the things on my to-do list is to go around the house with my camera and take pictures of all the furniture, everything that's inside of cabinets, anything of value, and put those pictures, because we have digital cameras, this is so easy, put those pictures on a thumb drive or some other portable hard drive that goes in the go bag. Your photo albums and digital photos are perhaps the most valuable thing that you have, and make sure that they get in your go kit in one way or another. Some of them, all of them. I worked at a photo lab before I retired, and people would pay hundreds of dollars to have fire damaged pictures of their family restored digitally. So that was very eye-opening to me about the value that people place on their family photos.
What I found was important was to have cash, ready cash to go, or if you get, you know, in other words, electronic credit cards and Visa cards or debit cards might not be available. They might not be usable. I also had another question that maybe everybody else has thought of, but I haven't organized this part, and you made a comment about relay messages through someone outside the area. So to family members, can someone say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Tricia, that was my comment. And what you were just describing too is probably more relevant to an earthquake scenario where if we had that major earthquake Cascadia event in the Pacific Northwest, we likely would not have electricity for months. So clearly our debit cards, credit cards would not function. So having, I don't know what the standard recommendation, but having a month's worth of expenses in cash is not unusual and might well be advised. So yeah, think about if you had to leave your home and or you were able to stay in your home and you had to buy groceries with cash for the month before you decided what comes next, what that would be, and have that money aside.
Thank you.
The other thing, the outside, having a outside contact, again, pertinent to an earthquake scenario where our communications goes down completely. I don't know if you all know that David Hazen being your block captain in our neighborhood, he has a commercial radio as the area leader of Area 9, and there are a number of folks with these FRS radios, family radio service, very, very short distance, but effective, outstanding. Look, there it is. So we're trying to be prepared for that loss of communication so that we can communicate. One of you is injured, you don't have a physician amongst you or a nurse amongst you, where's the nearest medical professional that can assist you? So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to organize as a neighborhood to make sure that we can get resources to those who need them as quickly as possible. And then again, that having a outside contact, having a family member in Chicago or Salt Lake City or wherever it is, that all your other family members, people that you want to be able to convey that you're okay, or that where you are, you're in a Red Cross facility or whatever, you want to have everybody having that phone number memorized, right? You don't, if it's in your contact list on your phone, it's not going to do you much good. So having that number memorized or written down so that everybody can call your niece, whomever it is in Salt Lake City, to check in, and she can convey messages to everyone else so that you can communicate. That's a huge thing with earthquake scenarios.
Okay, it's time for us to actually move into the scenario, and this is going to get all of you engaged in some decision making.
So the scenario we're about to contend with is that the governor has obviously declared a drought emergency. We got 2 months without any significant rain. High winds have moved into the area. Firebrands from the Barlow fire are blowing through and across Dexter Lake. They're igniting fires on both sides of Highway 58. As the fire moves to the northwest towards Pleasant Hill and Southeast Eugene, smoke limits visibility and speeds, and there are multiple reports of car accidents. This exercise starts with a simulated media announcement of a red flag warning and an interview with a local fire chief, stating that the authorities are considering a stage 1 evacuation alert for Cresswell and parts of Eugene Springfield. After a week in the high 90s and occasional triple digits, strong winds move in from the south at 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts to 30 miles an hour. So this, I don't know if any of you got to see that first forum of the Wildfire Preparedness Coalition. Eugene Springfield Fire Chief Heppel spoke at that forum, and he told us, and here's a man who's lived in our community his entire life. He's the fire chief of our Metro Fire Department, and he said, had that Holiday Farm fire originated in Dexter, Lowell, with that same wind pattern, he's convinced they would have been fighting fires. The firebrands would have blown into your neighborhood, into my neighborhood. He said we would be fighting it on Amazon, on Fox Hollow, on Willamette. So it's not unheard of that that could happen. So I know it's a simulated exercise, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
So this is how it may begin, with a radio announcement.
For KEPW News 97.3 FM, I'm John Smith reporting on the wildfire that is moving towards South Eugene. With traffic already slowed by multi-vehicle accidents and the heavy smoke conditions, emergency management authorities are thinking about issuing Level 1 Be Ready evacuation for zones 33 and 44 later today.
So now anyone can jump in here with the answer to the question, what will you personally do in this situation that you just heard? What do you think? There's no right answer here.
Run around and scream in a panic.
Stop.
Thanks, Dave.
We will put all our go bag stuff in the car, and the stuff that we have staged in the garage already, we throw it all in the car and then keep listening to the radio.
Okay, but you stay put.
I agree with what Heather said. I mean, when you hear that, it might happen. So it's evacuation level 1. So get going and get busy.
But it's not ours. They didn't, it wasn't 31, right?
No, right.
Okay.
I would leave.
Yeah.
But I'd also start calling my neighbors as we're driving away.
Yeah.
If we were in the same vehicle, I wouldn't do it if we were driving 2 vehicles. But you can't, I just feel like it's unpredictable. And if there's already car accidents and stuff, you're going to have to find a way on other streets, smaller streets, whatever. And that's what I would be considering it at that point.
Lucy.
Well, I think the first thing, well, let me back up. Some of you know that I moved here from Colorado, where I lived in the foothills in a fire zone, and was evacuated twice. First time I was out of town. And so all I had with me was a suitcase with my travel clothes in it. Luckily, a couple of the families on my 2-lane narrow, rural, I'm sorry, 1-lane dirt, very rural road. We had the volunteer fireman at the end of our cul-de-sac. It was a dead end street, very hard to evacuate out of. And luckily his wife drove 2 families in. Each family had 10 minutes to gather our stuff because they hadn't been home either, the other family. It's a long story, but basically for 10 minutes and a third of a little tiny, at that time, Toyota like RAV4, when they were a little smaller, we had to fit 3 families worth of stuff in the back of that within 10 minutes. So the next time that a fire threatened, it was kind of the ready, set, go. And by the time that early in the set, the second stage, I was out of there. I wasn't going to do the first time again. So I was obviously I was organized. I knew what I wanted, to take. I loaded up the car. I made sure that my dogs had kennel spots down in Denver, and not a local kennel because, they could move in there too. So just the moral of the story is don't wait. I was much more calm the second time and, had a place to stay each time, but it really did make me feel much better too. When they started the second level, I just said, there's no reason for me to stay. This is what you need to do to keep yourself safe. Now for this situation in this neighborhood where we live, I think I would do that, but I'd also visit every neighbor on my cul-de-sac and at the very dead end of Barber up the hill from the park to make sure everybody got the alert and just kind of act as a person that would go around and, I know everybody on the cul-de-sac, so I'd make sure that they were aware of what was happening. Luckily, as far as I know, we don't have anybody right now who would need physical help with a disability or God forbid, Alzheimer's or something like that. So right now, everybody is pretty physically able and could evacuate themselves, but who knows, they may need help at some point.
Thank
That's
you,
all.
Lucy. Yeah, that was great. That brings up the question of how do we make sure that everybody in the neighborhood knows about the alert?
But just as Lucy said, if you're prepared at a level 1 or even prior to that, with your evacuation plans, then you have the luxury of spending the time and going knocking on your neighbor's doors and making sure, especially again, as Lucy said, anybody who has special needs, those are the folks who really need to be looked in on as quickly as possible. So again, the value of being prepared, getting things in your vehicle early on when you first say get that text alert, so that it's not a scramble at the last minute. As I'm looking at this and thinking about holiday farm fire, if it's an easterly wind like occurred at the Labor Day fires last year, it surprised everybody, just as happened in Paradise, how rapidly the fire moved across the landscape. And so you can't even assume that our first responders, our most experienced and knowledgeable people, are going to be giving us the best advice, because Chief Heppel said he had no idea that the fire would move that quickly downriver, down the McKenzie River Valley. I mean, no one did. That hadn't happened in a generation. I mean, Tillamook fire probably was the last time in the 30s that kind of easterly wind happened in Oregon and created the kind of fires that it destroyed. Bandon, right? Destroyed much of Tillamook County. So that's the thing, is being prepared, getting ready early, and all the first responders, professional people say leave as early as you possibly can leave, because then you're assured you're able to get to where you're going.
Is there anybody in the room who feels like they are comfortable staying until alert level 3, the go now alert level? Anybody? What about Heather?
I just want to clarify something. So where we were at in the exercise was that they were considering doing alert level 1 for 2 zones that were not ours. So we were not yet on alert level 1, but it seems that people are saying here who've been through this, and maybe you guys, I don't know, that even if they haven't put alert level 1 on adjacent zones, and they certainly haven't put us on alert level 1, as soon as you guys heard of a fire out near Dexter, you would be out of here? No. Is that what you're saying?
If I can, I would, Heather, I would be putting all my things in my car at that point.
Okay. Okay.
The most some of you may know or have heard of Tim Inglesby. He's a neighbor of ours. He's a wildland firefighter in his younger days. He and I spoke a few days after the holiday farm fire, and he and I both were starting to load things in our car during that day, thinking this actually could happen. And so why wait to the last minute? That's all I'm saying is just take advantage of that time where you're calm and you're monitoring the communications. And the worst case scenario, you spend 15, 20 minutes throwing things in the car that now you have to take out.
No, that's excellent. I would have been waiting for alert level 1 in zone 31, and I didn't know this. This is really good information. Thank you so much.
Oh, this is something you, David Monk, could answer. We were talking about the shortwave radio communications in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And when do those get activated? When do people turn on their radios?
Well, what we've all agreed upon, we being the steering committee for the neighborhood preparedness program, we feel like if there's a declared emergency. We did this in the snowstorm where we lost power for 8 days. So as soon as that was declared, we decided, those of us who had radios, and we were communicating this amongst there are roughly 58, I think, of us around the neighborhood who have these FRS radios who can communicate through their area coordinators, David Hazen being the area coordinator in Area 9. We agreed to be on the radio top of the hour every hour. So we would turn our radios on for 5 minutes on the top of each hour just to hear if there was anything that we needed to be aware of or that we needed to communicate to others. So that's the way we're suggesting we do this in a disaster or emergency scenario, is that we top of each hour, we turn on our radio. We want to reserve our batteries as best we can, but we get on and either broadcast or receive whatever information is conveyed and then turn the radio back off. There's this multi-tiered aspect to our communications network. These FRS radios really only broadcast 3 or 4 or 5 blocks. Where the topography of our neighborhood is really challenging for these radios. So when David is broadcasting and those around you all, I'm up above you. I've almost got a line of sight off Fox Hollow to you, so I can hear you. But somebody just over the hill from me, I have neighbors that are near Spencer Butte Middle School that I can barely hear, and they're quarter mile away maybe. So again, the FRS radios have limitations, and that's why our area coordinators, of which there are 9 of them now, we have 10 areas, but we don't have an area coordinator for 6. They have a much more powerful radio, which would allows us to communicate across the neighborhood amongst area coordinators. And then the third tier of that is we have ham radio operators who would communicate with the city's emergency operations center. And that's where we will be informed of the response efforts of the city and the county, so that then we can convey that information back to everyone throughout the neighborhood, so that they know what the expectations are for first responders being able to come in and help.
So my job as the area coordinator is to collect information about who needs help and what problems, trees down across road, those kinds of things. I collect that information and I forward it then on to, well, it goes up level and eventually gets to the EMS system, but they're triaging the worst. They're going to take care of the worst situations first, and that's why we need each other.
Yeah, just a quick comment to that, David. Where this was John Murray's idea, and we haven't been able to fully build that out. But clearly, we want to identify. I'm a former building contractor. I have a chainsaw. I have a 4-wheel drive truck. We need to identify folks in the neighborhood who have those kind of tools, who would be willing to help out. And then if David Hazen had contact information for 3 or 4 of those folks that were within 20 blocks of him, and there was a down tree, so one of you is severely injured and you can't get out of the neighborhood because of a tree across your egress. So how do we get that tree out of there as quickly as possible? David could communicate that need. Hopefully we could identify somebody close at hand that could come with their chainsaw and a truck and get that log out of the road.
I'm wondering what FRS channel you would use to communicate. I have a couple FRS radios.
In this area, it's channel 9.
Channel 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave, we've divided the neighborhood into 10 areas. And as David Hazen just indicated, you all are in area 9, which I can't give, I've got the map right here, but I can't tell you for sure. Up against East Amazon, maybe goes up North Shasta Loop quite a ways. South to, there's an area 10, so probably not much south of Barber. Area 10 is then in the very southern tip of the neighborhood. So yeah, so the idea being that everybody in that area would go to that channel. So channel 9 for you all, and then you'd be able to communicate with most of the folks in that area.
So Ed Oxenrider, right across the park from you, he's one of our regular radio check-in people.
Okay, good to know.
And you're welcome to be part of that network.
More than welcome, yes.
Yeah. Take a 5-minute break, get up, stretch, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, and we'll continue in 4.5 minutes.
This is an exercise. For KEPW News 97.3 FM, I'm John Smith. Authorities have issued a level 3 go now evacuation alert for zones 33 and 34. Authorities are now confirming that several structures just outside of Eugene city limits in southeast Eugene were destroyed, and that the Barlow fire has moved into upper Amazon Creek drainage. Zones 19, 25, and 31 have moved to alert level 2. Be set.
All right, so the question on the floor for everybody to consider is, when you hear that announcement, what are you ready to do? Have you already left? Sounds like a lot of you have. Let's ask, what would be your destination? You know, you're going to evacuate. Would you go to the fairgrounds? Because what Eugene Springfield Fire and Emergency Services have determined are there's 3 sites: Valley River Center, the fairgrounds, and the place in Springfield. I forget the name of it, but these are gathering places where there will be services. FEMA and Red Cross will be coming in with help and assistance, information. You don't have to go to those spots. You can just go to Portland, go to the coast. Any ideas here?
Well,
How far do you want to go?
well, that was a question I have. Was there a reason you wouldn't go to a family member or a friend's house more in central or north or west Eugene?
Do you have such a family member, Jan?
Yes.
Yeah. Certainly, you could do that.
You know, Jan, the one benefit from say a group of neighbors like yourselves all evacuating to the same location is you can communicate with each other about what you knew was going on when you left, what kind of information you're getting from perhaps a neighbor who stayed behind. But I agree. I think you develop an evacuation plan, and if you have a family member to go to, that would make the most sense.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think communication is going to be really crucial. And if the neighborhood has a network like a phone tree, if we assume cell phones are still working, to communicate just that kind of thing that David Monk was talking about, it would be very helpful.
Do you think it would be helpful if we leave to like leave a note on our door or something like that in case people are coming to knock?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, just a note.
I have a suggestion about that.
Yeah.
Rather than a note where someone's going to have to walk up and read a paragraph or something, I think tonight we could figure out something that would be like the preparedness for an earthquake, like gone in really big letters, or, you know, need help, you know, like if somebody got hurt preparing to put their stuff in the car and they stumble down the stairs, you know, or I don't know. I think we could come up with something that would be really large print and you could read it from the sidewalk.
This is what Charlotte was talking about. I know it's backwards.
It reads well, yeah.
Now those are part of the Map Your Neighborhood booklets, but you can make up your own sign.
Other folks that we've talked to about this are concerned about giving some indication that you've vacated your home in case there are looters coming through the neighborhood, which could well happen. And so if it's something that only you know, you all know what that coding means, and agree. Yeah, just for you all just to decide on what that is, to indicate that you've evacuated, or on the inverse that you need help, that you're in the home and you need help to evacuate.
Yeah, I see your hand, Trish. And I just want to mention that security around a fire zone is pretty well organized, and you cannot enter a post-fire area without proper identification in most places. So be sure you have that with you when you leave. Trish?
Just the thing that it says, okay, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean I'm all right and I've left, or it could mean I'm okay and I'm still here. But either way, no one needs to go to that house because those people have said they're okay. And so if a looter was to come in, they wouldn't know what that meant either. It could still mean I'm home and I'm okay. So that one seems to be something that could work all the way around.
The sheriff and or the police in a fire scenario will take control of the streets. And I think it's pretty consistently the case that if they've evacuated an area, nobody gets in. And in some cases, you know, when they're in evacuation mode, neighbors who live there cannot re-enter. You know, you've left one of your pets or something, they're not going to let you back in. You just absolutely not going to get back in. So think about that. And then, as David said, once they relax that and allow just neighbors to come back in to check on their properties, you have to demonstrate with a photo ID that you live at the address you say you live at. So if for whatever reason your photo ID is a different address, make sure you have something else to demonstrate that the home that you want to go check on is within that enclosed area.
Should we all kind of agree that we're going to use those booklets, that okay is going to mean I'm okay or I'm gone, so that we all are on the same page with that?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Well, and can you tell us where again to get that? I mean, we could make one, but those seem like they're really, I mean, we could make one, I guess, through our computers and print it out, right?
We could just make copies.
I have a couple hundred of them of okay help signs that are on a, you know, inexpensive, lightweight 8.5 by 11. I could get those to David, so he could distribute those to you all. So I'd be happy to do that. And then based on what Charlotte said, you might think about, because Tricia was spot on with the okay could mean we've evacuated, or it could mean we're here. So you all could say have some, you know, those little circular colored stickers that you do that you use when you I don't know what they call various meetings, you know, where you're trying to gauge people's interest or opinion on something. You could just have a sticker on that okay sign for you all to know whether that person, that family has evacuated. So just an idea.
Yeah, and since we're only a small percentage of all the people in this neighborhood, I'm thinking we're going to have to organize a door-to-door walking canvas of our other neighbors with an information handout of procedures that we're thinking about or that we have adopted, suggestions. I don't know how we're going to do that, but that's for another meeting, perhaps.
But David,
Yeah.
You, as the person who runs the email Park Alert network, when I've checked with Charlotte, I think you have everybody on your list. I think you've got the most comprehensive list of the neighborhood. I don't know anybody who's not on your list, right, Charlotte?
Yeah.
So I think
I'm sure there are some people who aren't, but it's the biggest list we have.
Yeah.
And if everybody were notified, and please check with your neighbor on each side that they've received this, we could probably reach the people that aren't on it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to, what we're talking about is confirming that everybody's evacuated and that nobody gets left behind. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I thought you were talking about notifying about this whole thing in advance. Okay, never mind.
About the alerts. Yeah.
I think they're kind of dovetailed, you know.
Can I just interrupt here for a second before we go on? David, I think it was you that mentioned some kind of information sheet. And at this point, I can only think of two things, the okay sign and that, well, maybe there's more, that you have a radio and whatever else there might be. But if you made up something like that, I think it would be really helpful, because where I am, there's people down the street towards East Amazon that have no idea that you are also connected, because I only just found out about that myself, and it was kind of through my own initiative. And then there's people up Bentry also. So I would love to have one of those information sheets that I could get to the Bentry neighborhood and then west of me. And then those people could take it on from there, wherever they feel they're connected to. So it would be just a chain reaction to really make the ripples out from what you all have started so beautifully.
What I hope will happen is that there are other people who will take on like a block captain role to do this kind of check-in on their neighbors, because the whole area is too big for me. It would take me hours to go door to door.
Well, but the information sheet would be so helpful. Just things like your alert, your air horn, that
Right.
people will hear all over and won't know how to interpret it. And I would be happy to pass that on. I'm not really a block captain, but I can pass out a flyer.
Yeah, that's the kind of help I need. Lucy.
And I'm willing to make sure that all the neighbors up at the top of Barber, and I'm trying to look at the map in my brain. The Prevention's just not working. Make sure that everybody on this cul-de-sac and at the several houses at the top of Barber, and I don't even know about Paddock. I don't know anybody who lives on Paddock, unfortunately. I don't know any names or anything, but I'd be willing to go door to door with a sheet that just has information in bullet form, especially with like David's email, because I'm not sure if everybody up here for sure is on your Shadowwood email. They may be, I've never really asked, but
I think there are very few, just a sprinkling.
Yeah, on your cul-de-sac, Lucy, I have information on, I think, 3 households besides yours.
Okay, well, that's more than I would have figured.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd be willing to go door to door and just, leave it on their screen door or whatever, just that has the very most important things, and then your contact information, just so they know that there's somebody who they can contact to get more information or sign up for some of these, because I've never seen anybody except our new neighbor Claire and Roger from our cul-de-sac.
Let's jump on ahead to the return phase after the fire.
This is an exercise. For KEPW News 97.3 FM, this is John Smith reporting. Authorities have completed their first survey of the metro areas that were hardest hit by the Barlow fire. In evacuation zones 25 and 31, they say roughly half of all homes were destroyed. We will pass along the final lists as soon as they are made available. Authorities have established roadblocks throughout the area to prevent looting. Residents must show proof of address, such as your current driver's license, to be escorted into the area. Grief counselors from Green Cross will hold a community meeting at South Eugene High School later this week.
This is perhaps the heaviest part of this whole exercise. I mean, I get this sinking feeling in my stomach. So the floor is open. What would you do at this point? Anybody, just unmute yourself. You don't know if your home has been destroyed or not.
I'd come back with my driver's license. I think all of us would, to find out.
with the way the wind is and the embers, it could be this house is gone, this house is here. You never know. And of course you have to process it. Don't drink any of the water. We learned that, it might not be safe to use any of the utilities or anything. You have to find all of that out.
Lucy, what happened to you when you came back in?
Well, I stayed up locally. We had an emergency for the first time when I wasn't home. And as I said, we kind of talked the National Guard guy into letting us back into our neighborhood and getting some items, supposedly for our volunteer firefighter friend. But we took stuff of our own. I knew which neighborhoods were being hit because I stayed locally with my son who lived close to the fire, but we could see everything from his house. So I knew which neighborhoods were going up in flames. So, I wasn't worried because I knew what was going on. Plus at the high school, the emergency evacuation center, they had meetings almost daily with, the Forest Service and the volunteer fire department captains. And so we had really good communication. And the second time when, I wasn't truly evacuated, but I left voluntarily just because I didn't need the heartache. I can't remember where I went the second time. I think I went to Denver where I had a relative about 30 miles away. But again, my son was still living up there. So I had a contact, not within the evacuation zone, but just outside of it. So I knew pretty well what was going on. Our neighborhood was never hit, but we knew pretty much which neighborhoods were being hit. So, it was very good communication that they had. Because again, it was in one of those red zones southwest of Denver. So people had been through this many times. And so it was just one of those things that they were very well organized.
Don't expect that if you can just go back home that you just get to stay there. There might not be power. It might just be going to look, and then you're going to have to evacuate again. It might be a while till you can come back if your house is still there.
I remember in the holiday fire, there was a lot of cleanup that had to happen. Roads had to be cleared. A question we need to consider is how can the people who survived this fire support the people who lost their homes? Is there anything we could do as a neighborhood?
And just stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
And see what they need. Ask, how can I help?
In the holiday farm fire, there were a lot of relief organizations working in a lot of locations up and down the McKenzie that had resources. And in Eugene, like United Way did a lot. And there were some other local community organizations. So donating or bringing stuff to those places can be helpful also.
One of my friends had one of those, freak conditions where the fire came up the gully to her house, but left every other house on her cul-de-sac standing. So, a lot of people then for her, she had nothing. She was out of town. She had nothing with her. So she lost everything, totally everything. So people would donate things to her, like chairs or kitchen appliances. She eventually had to go in a rental for almost 2 years before she could rebuild her house. But people, she had a lot of friends, and people would just donate items, so she could set up a house again, even as a temporary, sanctuary for her. So that's one thing that I think as neighbors, we all have something that we could give to somebody else.
This reminds me that evacuation is about saving lives. And you can do some things to fire harden your home before the evacuation or the fire comes. But fire spreads from house to house. I think I want to make that point. That's what I learned about urban area, in a wildfire zone, is that one house will set the next house on fire like dominoes. And some of those embers will leapfrog down to other houses. But generally, neighbors who fire harden their property by doing all that preparation stuff can really reduce the risk of fire spreading from house to house. And that has to be a team effort. And I know there are volunteers now going around to help people assess what would be the highest priority thing you can do to protect your home. You know, like clear overhanging limbs, move bark mulch away from your house. We're about ready to close up. And any further comments on this phase?
Hey, one thing I'd just like to point out, seems a little silly, but make sure your homeowner's insurance is up to date because things like lumber costs have gone way up. I was surprised when I went recently that I really didn't have enough insurance for the replacement cost at this point. So, and when I was there at the insurance office, she said, well, people have been calling, you know, from other places where they've had fires, and there's a fire there and they're trying to upgrade their insurance. Well, they're not going to do that when there's a fire coming down the street. So just make sure you're up to date on, you know, protecting yourself financially in case the worst thing happens.
I'm going to finally say something, a couple of things, actually. One thing I don't think I heard anyone mention before any folks evacuate the area is make sure you turn off your natural gas hookup at your house and your neighbors' houses, that kind of thing. Because in many cases, even if homes don't burn, the natural gas explosions that can occur subsequently can take out a city block. It's as simple as taking a crescent wrench and turning off the gas connection at the house if you have natural gas. The second thing is basically to express a concern I have. Charlotte and I visited the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument last spring, and we drove from Talent to Ashland along I-5 and basically saw how the fire there tore through the Bear Creek riparian area because of the dry conditions, the trees over the river there. And it basically acted as an absolute conduit for fire. I have the same concern about Amazon Creek. And I don't know what considerations the city is taking with respect to that hazard. I'll leave it at that.
Some of you have heard of me on some of these Zoom meetings, and also David Monk through emails and meetings. I moved in here 3 years ago, and the upper cul-de-sac has that natural area right behind our houses, just uphill. I mean, my backyard is right next to it, and it's a Shasta Ridge Homeowners Association. It's a no build conservation area, and it has a little wetland back there. And for 3 years, you know, several neighbors and I have been encouraging them to clean up back there because dry, dead thickets, everything, dead trees. Finally, after bothering them for 3 years, one of the neighbors up there decided that she would take action. She had the fire marshal and the city environmental person come up and visit that whole area. And of course, they were in opposition. The environmental gentleman said, you can't do anything to this conservation area. And the fire marshal said, you're going to have to do something about this conservation area. So my point being that they cleaned it up about, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it looks great. I mean, yes, some of the habitat for the deer and the turkeys is gone. However, they clean up all the ground stuff. This is what it was really needed. So it looks wonderful. I'm really pleased that they did take action. And I guess my point is don't give up. So if we need to, you know, keep talking to the city fire marshal about Amazon Creek. It can be done if the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
So I've heard some really good ideas, and John's comment about Amazon Creek, it's something that is very valid. As you said, it's these are conduits through a neighborhood or into a neighborhood where the fire might run. I think with Bear Creek, the blackberries are hugely flammable. I think that contributed immensely to that conflagration. So I'll reach out to Public Works. I work with Parks folks and Amazon Creek. So I'll see if they have any planning, any thoughts on that. It's such a huge amenity for us, right? We want to maintain that shading of the water, but clearly there's danger with wildfire. So I'll talk to them and I'll report back to David Hazen.
I just want to. I'm not advocating by any means clear cutting Amazon Creek or anything like that, but it is there just to have an assessment of the level of the shrub habitat and that kind of thing is just an issue that I think we ought to be aware of.
Thank you. Agreed. Yes. And as an aside, David Hazen mentioned that there are a bunch of us in the neighborhood. Some of you might have received an email in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, letting you know that we're finally at a place where those of us who are volunteering to do these site visits to help neighbors better understand how they can protect their homes and properties. We're there. If you saw that email and you want that site visit, please contact us and we'll do that. I went through a workshop a couple of years ago and was excited by hearing how important trees are to preventing fires. I mean, the trees are creating shade, maintaining a cooler temperature and moisture in the soil. So if you're concerned about having somebody come to your property because you're afraid they will tell you have to take all your trees out, it's not that at all. Believe me, I was very pleased to better understand how you go about creating defensible space. And it's perhaps thinning, so you might need to take out a tree or two that's too tightly wrapped, too close to others, limb some up, take some ladder fuels, shrubbery that's on the ground, take it down a bit. But having a lot of vegetation that's shading the soil is a good thing. It's really close to your home. That is the most critical area. So again, we'd be happy to visit. And to Lucy's point, I'm so glad to hear that your neighbors have come around. We actively try to meet with neighbors who are reluctant, some like absentee property owners, right, who have some land that's undeveloped and they're unwilling to spend any money on it and it's endangering their nearby neighbors. We've certainly had conversations with those neighbors. It's a very difficult one because it's a financial one for them, and they're reluctant to spend that money to clear reduce the risk to their neighbors. So if you happen to fall into that category and you'd like our help, please reach out to us.
Okay, I think we should mention the evaluation form.
Yes.
It's in the participants guide, which was sent to you as a PDF a couple of emails ago. If you don't have it, we can make sure you get it, because you can fill it out on paper, but it's probably much easier to just take the link that's in that participants guide and go online and evaluate this exercise, because this exercise can only get better with feedback from the people who are participating in it. So any closing comments people want to make? Just keep it brief and we'll wrap up.
This was great. Very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Trish?
Yeah, I just want to also say thank you. And I'm so incredibly impressed with all the work that people have done before this. So somehow you all woke up much sooner than I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah, before on that previous survey, I said I'd leave on level 3. That I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to go more like level 1, get all ready to go, and then start knocking on neighbors next door. You got to get. I really appreciate this, and I just got an alert that our red flag warning has expired, and we're done with that for now, anyway.
Yay.
I appreciated the tabletop discussion. I got a lot of information from all of you. I really appreciate it.
Anybody else get the alert sense? Because I got it about. I got
We
it.
got it in email.
No, I got an actual alert sense at about 8 o'clock.
From that.
About the expiration of the red flag warning?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I get these things in email, but they don't come in on my phone app all the time. That's the problem. They always come in on email.
I came in at 8:10 on my on a text alert and then an email. So,
David, I just want to
8:10.
I just want to add one thing that David Monk, by the way, thank you so much for all your years and years and years of service. I would say for me, and this may just be me, I know that I'm a native Oregonian, born and raised in Portland, lived in Eugene ever since. I have a lot of trouble, and this has really helped me, taking seriously the real threat. And I'm not discounting it. I'm saying it's just psychological. It's like, oh, and so when you told us when you guys gave us that scenario about how, and told us how close we came in the Holiday Farm fire, that's what I think a lot of us who maybe are from here, I mean, a lot of you guys came up from California, or you're like, Jim, you've built houses down in Paradise, right? And people who have been through these, or Charlotte, or Lucy, I have a hard time psychologically just reminding myself that this really could happen, and it could happen very fast. Yes, talent, okay, or mopping or whatever, but I'm a Valley. And so that when you give future presentations, or the one that you gave to us tonight, that was one of the most valuable things, was just to kind of drill it into my head that yes, it can happen here, and it can happen that fast. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that mention of the psychological aspect, because I've met people who are cynical about the whole thing and say, well, you can do this prevention and that prevention, but you're going to burn up anyway. So why do anything? And that kind of nihilistic attitude. I think what I want to commission all of you to do is to talk to your neighbors now as you see them, the ones that are not on this call. When you're out walking, or even just driving by and you happen to see them outside the house, just roll down your window and ask them, hey, do you know about this initiative? Are you ready? What have you done? Get them amped up a little bit so that we get a bigger community effort right here.
David, will you give us a fact sheet to hand out to them when we roll down our window?
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah, I've written myself a note, and I really appreciate that suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
And David, I have a bunch of brochures that Whitney helped us with last year, just before the pandemic, that describes the neighborhood program to try to get us all better prepared for any potential disaster. So that might be a good piece. It's just a trifold. This is Whitney's, well, and John Murray had something to do with this as well, but this might be good, something good to distribute to your nearby neighbors with that more specific piece about your part of the neighborhood. If you'd like to have those, I'll bring dozens of them to you.
Thank you, David. All right, let's say good night.
I have a question before we leave. David.
Yes.
And it's directed to either you, the two Davids, and maybe Nancy can help on this too. In terms of the water system's capability to do landscape irrigation prior to the maelstrom that we're conceiving here. I have plans to, because since we've got so much bark mulch around and stuff, to get it completely saturated and wet before we would leave. Is that going to tax the water system that crews would be depending upon for protection? And if so, there would some guidance, would be really, really helpful on that. Yeah, no, that's basically it.
That's a good question. I mean, I actually would be interested in knowing more specifics in terms of numbers, and I could probably ask someone and find out. But yeah, I mean, I had the same thought, because obviously watering your lawns before such a scenario could help. But because we only have about 2 days of storage at a time in our water system, that could certainly affect, I mean, it could potentially have an effect, I would think, on firefighting resources. So I might do some research and get back to you, unless either of the Davids knows more.
Thank you.
What I could add to that, Nancy, if you would do that research, that would be fabulous. There was an article in the Register Guard that suggested that this was something residents could do in anticipation of a fire coming into the area. And I can tell you, I've met people down near Paradise who are fully convinced that they saved their house because they had an external sprinkler system saturating their house and the immediate area. So I think it's a really good idea. This article in the Register Guard suggested that. We contacted Eugene Springfield Fire to get their response, because we were concerned that if we're all broadcasting water on our properties, we're going to diminish their ability to fight a fire. And I wasn't satisfied with the response.
Yeah.
What they said was, if you're in a level 1 and you have time, sure, do it. But if you're in level 3, leave. And so it didn't really speak to this finite amount of resources that are available to fight fire. So to the degree that you find something, Nancy, and you could share that with David Hazen, that'd be great. I'll do the same. And if we find out something definitive from Eugene Springfield Fire in terms of advising us, we'll let you know.
And I think it'll be important to put that in the handout that David Hazen is assembling from other suggestions from people, to have something real concrete there once we know.
Thank you for this. It's been really, really great. I really appreciate it.
All right, the meeting's ended. You may all go and rest.
Yeah.
Sleep.
Thank you, David.
Thank you all.
Thank you.